The Lost Cryptids Conservatory, where we will shatter your reality to bring you closer to the truth.
All right, guys, another live show. We have a special today, Cyrus. He's an awesome guy. He has his own. He used to have his own podcast and stuff. He still does a little bit of it. And right now, we're going to talk a little bit of a strange, unknown, and lost cryptid. So, Chris, welcome on the show.
Hi, good evening, guys. I'm happy to be here. It's for me personally, it's an honor. Blake, obviously we've spoken in the past before. You were a guest on my show, and of course, Chad, we've spoken in the past as well for the past few years and on social media. So I'm honored to be here, guys. Thank you again for having me.
Yeah, of course. So, the big question is, what got you started in all these, fringe topics and stuff?
Yeah, no, the infamous question about where do we start with cryptozoology? For me, I grew up in a new generation of course, tech savvy kids who obviously are arrogant, and many can admit to that, of the millennial age. But at the same time, TV growing up has always been something that was fascinating to me because I loved watching TV. And when I was younger, I had seen these television episodes. Of course, when you're 5 years old, you don't know what episode means. I mean, you probably do nowadays, but we're talking early 2000s, so you don't know what episodes mean. You don't even know what that show may be called because your mind is so young and you don't know a lot of things. You're still developing. So I was introduced to Unsolved Mysteries, and the original one that was hosted by Robert Stack, and I was very intrigued with a lot of their cryptid episodes because, of course, as a kid, you're puzzled to think that everything that they reenact is real, and you're like, wow, look at the size of that Bigfoot in that episode, when, it's just a guy in a suit who's just reenacting an encounter from somebody. But that's what drew my interest, really. It was because of television, and then I started doing my own research. I went ahead and looked up on Google a lot of things you can find about Bigfoot. I remember back in the summer of 2006, I was just home from the holiday vacation from school and just looking up various Bigfoot things. And it was just so fascinating because it was like, wow, people really think this thing exists. And then I was introduced to Harry and the Hendersons and, all of these interesting Bigfoot B movies from Sci-Fi Channel. And, it got me instantly hooked in cryptozoology, but it made me think mentally, okay, so we see these things in pop culture. Obviously, they're on TV shows. And when you got around 2008, 2009, where my brain is more developed, more mature, I'm thinking to myself, I was like, what could these things be? What are they? Why are these things so hidden? And mind you, this is pre-Facebook advancements. This is pre-Instagram, pre-Twitter,
Right.
2008, 2009. So not everybody is familiarized. We're still familiarizing ourselves with early developments of internet access, with chat rooms. Even people have used 4chan. This is before Reddit too. So of course, not a lot of forums the forums were just forums, and before this major form outlets we have today. So
Right.
yeah, no,
Exactly.
it's all like, really, to be honest with you, it's really thanks to television. But obviously now I'm older, so I know that not everything on TV is obviously real. I know that obviously in these reenactments that they did on Unsolved Mysteries, Bigfoot was actually a guy in a suit. So clearly, the mind has matured since. But yeah, the long answer to such a basic question, but a good
Yeah.
question, because you know why? Because I will say, I mean, you can't have I can't have a casual conversation with any of my close friends like I'm having with you two gentlemen about this, like cryptozoology. I can't express that to them because they would call the local lunatic asylum and say, yeah, this Chris Cyrus fellow I know, he's a little crazy. He's crazy in the head. He's talking about Bigfoot, hairy apes, and flying saucers. I don't like this guy. You might want to evaluate him. And that would be the honest thing, because that's ridicule, because people would think you're
Yep.
crazy talking these things.
Yeah, and it's sad because people experience them every day, and the people who don't experience them, who laugh at it, ridicule, and bully, they don't have a clue because people who have experiences, they know for a fact that these things exist. So, take us into any encounters that you have and thoughts on these different cryptids. What are your favorites and what's your opinion on them?
The beauty of cryptozoology is that you can always explore more than one cryptid. I mean, you're studying topics that have no means of being documented in all of our textbooks in history because it's been so hidden. And when we look at, like, for example, Bigfoot, of course, was what I got me into cryptozoology, and then proceeding with Mothman and the Dogman cryptid. And the thing is that with cryptozoology, my first few roundabouts with the Bigfoot cryptid happened when I first started becoming a researcher back in 2013, 2014. For a long time, obviously, because when you're a young adult just trying to, like, grow up and live your best life, you're not like, as a teenager. I know some teenagers who love talking Bigfoot, love talking Dogman, but that's because of the shows that are out now. Back when I was in high school, and obviously back when everybody else was back in high school, we didn't have that. We only just had, like, for me, my time period was different. We had started developing that, but it wasn't as mainstream as it is now. But getting to the point of it, Bigfoot, I remember I introduced a couple of colleagues to a Wes Germer's show, Sasquatch Chronicles, and they expressed to me some experiences that their relatives have had in the state of New Jersey. Now, the thing about this is that, these are people that were acquaintances. They expressed that these were basic ABC encounters. What I mean by that is their relatives were just driving late at night, and they happened to have come across a hairy creature cross a road, move and walk off of a road that's so close and narrow that you don't even see traffic come through. There's barely any cars, so it's a great place for a creature to express itself in habitat at certain hours of the night. I mean, keep in mind, when truckers are going down these long narrow roads because they can't go on an expressway or a parkway, the truckers see the most crazy things they can see. I know truckers who've seen bear, deer, and I know truckers who've seen dogmen. And it's funny because it's like, in all of their experiences, they've been on narrow roads, which makes you think how close the ecosystem for these creatures are when they look at certain habitats. I got done with an investigation in March with a fellow New Jersey researcher who we investigated a series of reports. While we found nothing, we had collected a story. And one of the biggest challenges, I think, as an investigator is when you have a story from somebody, or whether it's someone close or someone who sends you an email or a message. And the problem is that it's also hard because the way they tell their story, you don't want to deliberately, as an investigator, say, listen, blah, 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 blah. This is, we're having I have a bit of a challenge with this. I'm saying you could be skeptic However, I think it's sometimes hard to find the right words when being skeptic. I've always been 100% skeptical about accounts, especially because I don't think every account is genuine. I'm not going to give out certain examples, particularly because I'm not trying to start conflicts with any particular shows. But I will say, though, is when I do watch a show on Bigfoot or I watch a show on Dogman, we hear about these encounters, but do we really know that that happened? Do we know that this person really had an experience? Or do we know that this person can easily be drawn by pop culture and say, I want to add myself to that bargain? And you'd say to yourself, well, why would they do that? And it's simple, because it's so easy to make fame on the internet. We have Instagram, we have Twitter, we have TikTok. We have all of these apps. We've organized ourselves to get so popular with it. We look at TikTok, right? Anybody can make edits to TikTok because, hell, the whole app is based off of making your own edits and videos. So, I mean, anybody can make something up. And that's the thing that fascinates me about when we read encounters, is the fact is that we look at a lot of these cases, but it's like, how do we know what's right and what's wrong? And of course, we can look at what, pioneers like Peter Byrne, Lauren Coleman, Bob Gilman, what they've talked about in the past and what they've written, what they've discussed in their literature. But at the same time, it's like, how do we also convince that for the new generation of investigators too? So yeah, I'm a little all over with this, but to break it down to you, when I look at Bigfoot, Dogman, all these other encounters, I take a lot of things with a grain of salt, but at the same time, I also want to express what that eyewitness, how they reacted to it. And I'll give you a great example of this. So to take a little break from Bigfoot, I want to talk a little bit about the Dogman Cryptid. So Dogman Cryptid has been my bread and butter for nearly 6 years. And Chad, we've met in a Dogman group, actually, so we have that connection. And one of the reasons why I got hooked into being an investigator for that topic was because I had known somebody who no longer lives in the state that I'm in, resided that he had the encounter in, but expressed it to me in a very emotional way. And when we returned to that site where he had the encounter, the body language I had seen and others have seen was very faint and disturbed, that we literally were only there for only a few minutes. We spent this hour and a half drive to the location, and that was the result. And yes, while it was merely disappointing, I'm not the type of person who would put anybody in danger, especially if they don't know particular guidelines and pertaining to why they're there, if they've taken an interest in it. But you follow that. That's the beauty of being a researcher. To my point, though, into the story, when this individual had this experience, and I've expressed this show as an encounter, as well as also on Dogman Encounters with Bitkundiv and a few other channels as well. Some of you might know it. It involves a story of an individual with his buddy in the Pine Barrens in New Jersey who had heard some weird noises coming from north of them, and they had a headlamp and a light, and they happened to see a creature looking right at them, a little bit of blood popping out of the mouth, nearly 50 feet away. They dropped their belongings. Majority of the things they took that were valuable: cellular device, weapon, and a blanket. But other than that, they vanished. They got out of there. They left. They were that terrified. So ultimately, as a result, it wasn't until I had shown a sketch of the LBL beast that I brought it to this individual's attention. They got so emotionally freaked out by it that they broke down. So when I look at that, I can tell that that's somebody, and not just because I know the person, but because if you're going to have a mental breakdown almost on the same capacity of someone who has experienced war, that says a lot to me right there. I'm not trying to make that as a solid comparison, because seeing a Bigfoot and then going to war are two strongly different things. But when you look at it from like somebody who has seen something that's life changing, like I've seen people who've seen car accidents, including myself, and I literally, when I passed down one intersection, I saw the accident on, I still get goosebumps because it was freaky to me. So I'm sure anybody else has as well. But I mean, when I see someone like that react, I'm definitely thinking, okay, yeah, no, you're legit, because unless you're a great actor, and I know this person can't act, nothing against them, but.
Do you guys mind if I backstep a minute to something you said earlier?
Yes, please, go ahead.
You were talking about semi-truck drivers and the sightings. Now we have a team member that also has his own. He does his own thing with doing his reports and his database. Uh, the most common sighting is motorists. Now, what about all the police officers that are out late at night on these backcountry roads and these reports, and just regular motorists? I mean, it's like almost 50% of sightings are roadside sightings, and most of them are at night.
It's a very good question too, because one of the things I wanted to touch base on was when we look at law enforcement, right? We look at officials to the state, like EMS, firefighters, even too. I actually had a couple cases from people who are essential workers who had Bigfoot dogman encounters. I'll tell you one story. There was an individual, he's a retired cop, and out of his jurisdiction in Monmouth County, he had an experience with one thing one night. And I posted in one of the groups, he had made sudden eye contact with it because he thought it was somebody who was like, because where he was at particular, it wasn't like he was nearby like an area that it's like a suburb that has a lot of, like, at the time there was a heavy drug rate, but no one goes through these backwoods or roads without, like, let's just say they were at the time, this was like in the late 90s. So, anybody who was dirt biking going through there, or more importantly, if you were a resident around an area and you took a shortcut route, you would just like take through there, because nobody who is from around there will go through that road, is the whole idea. So initially, this officer, when he had passed by, because obviously it's in his jurisdiction. So of course, when you're in the late hours of the night, you see cops parked on the side of the road. They're clearly trying to wait for someone to make a violation. So, this officer's just doing his rounds, and he just thinks that there's just a random guy out there, and he gets out of his vehicle. He realizes, because it's on a hill almost, that this is standing very tall, because it's got his lights. His lights are flashed there. His headlights are picking up some form of light that's illuminating. But then what set him back was when he saw the eyes, because the eyes were amber eye shine. And he knew it wasn't a human after that. And he was about to shine his light at it, but he backed off because he was afraid that whatever it was going to be something, and he knew it wasn't human. And this is somebody who is he's a Christian, and he goes to church. However, he knew though that if that was a human, he would have been already in a conflict, because then clearly dogman and human are two different characteristics. So law enforcement has seen these things, and there's different variants of the story. Some law enforcement who's seen it, who's been young, they've often gotten the heavy, hard treatment about it. There's that conspiracy that law enforcement do know about them, but it's kind of covered up. And that goes into that other conspiracy about, why they are covered up. But, I've interviewed people who are former law enforcement who swear that they had seen this and it happened. And I can guarantee you, even bringing up the fact of semi-truck drivers, there are people when they're in the late hours of night, because there's hardly no one on the road. I've seen deer cross the parkway at 1 a.m. when I'm driving from one exit back from the area I've been at. That's 40 exits away from mine. And these are like these are southern woods, mind you. And what I mean is that, like, where I'm at in my state, we're more residential. We have more city-like. When you go down south, though, it's more laid back. There's not a lot of city. And in those wee hours, you see all these deer and stuff. And it's possible that, yeah, of course, something like a cryptid could easily walk with no problem, no hesitation.
Oh, yeah.
If the town closes at 11 and there's woods nearby, I'm going to see deer crossing around near the town because the place is closed. But yeah, no, there's been some. It's interesting when people report them in late hours of the night, because clearly, like any other wild animal out there, it's creatures of the night. So that's their time. That's their daylight, because there's not a single soul that can distract them.
That is right. It's because the way modern people are, go to bed at 10, turn the TV on, shut the lights off. We're not out in the woods. We're not traversing the landscape. We're not even guarding our own property at night. So they've, and all cryptids have probably seen and adapted to it. And it's not that hard to do. Our senses are very dull compared to them, who are always out in the wilderness 24/7 and trying to be hidden, trying to be stealthy. So they're always, evolving these senses and these reflexes and the intelligence to do what they do undetected. So, Chris, go into your own personal, investigations and research and some stuff. What were your findings? Have you found any evidence of any cryptids and stuff?
Yeah, so my investigations go as far back as 4 years ago. I remember back in 2017, I had conducted a small investigation in the Pine Barrens in the local Wharton State Forest region of New Jersey, where we were with a couple buddies of mine, experienced hunters and outdoorsmen, were just exploring a certain trail. And these people they've seen black bear. We have a heavy black bear population in New Jersey, particularly in the Ocean County area. And they've seen a lot of things. They've heard of Bigfoot, they've heard of Dogmen, they've watched shows. However, they're not as big they're not as big into it as we are. And we were out there, and my main task was looking for tree breaks, sounds, and particularly anything physical, such as a print, a claw mark, a hair, scat. And we found nothing, but we noticed that there wasn't a lot of wildlife, or at least in this case, birds chirping. So whether there was a presence of us, and we went by some of their code too, especially by how some of these birds were chirping, whether it was a high pitch or a low pitch to give us a good or bad signal if something was around or whatever. So we had found nothing there. And then in 2018 was the return of the Pine Barrens, where this individual I explained his encounter about. We came back to the site and we were out instantly. And I also felt a slight bit of nausea there as well. I don't know if it was just the atmosphere or if it was the fact that I wasn't feeling good as much that week, because I remember it vividly. I had upper respiratory, but I had the strength to actually go out and do this. But still, I felt the stress levels, and everybody feels an energy. I think we feel energies every second of our day. But when you feel an energy of dread in the woods, and when you've been in the woods for a while, that really does toy with you. And that's what happened there. So we didn't really get much out of that. But some of our more recent investigations, I took a break in 2020 because of the COVID pandemic, and a lot of things shut down. So we couldn't have much access to the backwoods unless we were around suburbs that had clear back pathways. And if there were sightings, particularly that made through that break, I investigated with an investigator in New Jersey. And this individual, we had talked for about a couple months because we were plotting out a trip to go down to a particular park in southern New Jersey by Cape May. And this park, we had investigated a series of claims from an individual who had seen a ghost emerge from a lake, Bigfoots that were passing by. There was a woman who had seen a Bigfoot that was 14 feet tall. And we were very skeptical of that. And during the whole trip, we were looking for, like in the previous investigations, physical evidence. We found some interesting things. Of course, when we see the tree breaks, when we see the structures, people would think too sometimes when we see like a bunch of sticks together, not particularly sticks that look like they're crafted like makeshift, like some form of like, I don't know. When I think of Bigfoot structures, sometimes how they construct them, I kind of think it reminds me so much. And I don't know why it reminds me, but it reminds me of like a hut. I don't know why, but it just does. And furthermore, when we see some of these tree breaks, when we see just a bunch of trees that obviously came crashing down because of the storm, people would assume that, oh, well, that's Bigfoot, marking a territory, but we don't. It's not obviously the case. I mean, you got to think a little
Right.
dive into a little bit more. And that was something I also learned more vividly with this investigator, because in this individual, he taught me a lot of things. And another thing is too, and what he taught me basically was just like showing me a more organic way of going about it, because I had never really investigated with another cryptozoologist before this individual. I'd always investigated with former outdoorsmen, hunters, anybody who's experienced with the wildlife, because clearly, it's always good to carry somebody with that type of knowledge. But yeah, no. So we went out there and we were trying to find physical evidence. We found things that looked like tree breaks, but they weren't. We tried to find alphabetical twigs, and I'm sure you know what I mean by that. I probably phrased it wrong, but basically, how they have their certain code or alphabet when they use like the
You're
twig.
talking like glyph, right?
Glyph. Yeah,
like
yeah, that's what the word is, glyph.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we found a lot of interesting things. Particularly, we found a couple deer bones. Now, it could have been anything. We found in these sand dunes, it was hard to make out because of the particular consistent footprints, but we saw different types of tracks that came off kind of not like Bigfoot like, but just they didn't feel like human tracks, to put it to you like that. In these sand dunes, I don't think there's anybody out there dipping their bare foot into a bunch of sand that has like a little bit of poison ivy on it. Also, too, because of the time of year, because we went mid-March, so it was the ending of the winter and beginning to get into spring for the season. So there's not a lot of activity, but we didn't really find a lot. We did find a lot. There's a lot of interesting places, and I'd be glad to share some photographs with you guys of where we were, because they're very. It was
I have
a very
a
good
theory
report.
I'd love to ask you, because I really don't know a lot about your research.
Yeah.
What do you find with electrical sources, power lines, rivers that have high mineral content that'll run fast, ley lines? I can't say that it's true, but the most encounters and the things that happen to me are in areas that have high electricity, high stray electricity from power lines. And any theory on that?
You see, the thing about me with that is, and this is where it gets debated, it gets thrown into like, do we think that they could be paranormal because of the electrical connection to that? I can tell you that all the Dogman and Bigfoot experiences that I've collected and have people reached out to me, they have been close to electrical grids, power lines, especially, whether they were 20 feet away from the local power line in their car, or they were at home and there's a power line right directly across, right next to them in their neighborhood. And they've seen something there. But then we look at like actual power grids, like, an actual transmission where people have seen these things by power grids or something like that. I don't know why they like that. That is that to me, because, and it doesn't sound like, as the most researched answer, but it's basically because if there's something, the electrical connection there, do they eat the electricity? Do they feed on it? If that was the case, then I think they would be carcasses of barbecue, because I think they would get electrocuted. I do believe, and this is just me, I'm not the biggest fan of when we get into like supernatural and paranormal, because then I think we're talking about something different. But I respect everyone's opinion on it, because I'm not one to have bad blood like that. But it won't mean that I fully agree, and that's just how anybody should be normally. And I don't go with it because when we look at that paranormal connection, we think of some of these creatures in electrical grid. We think of like, okay, well, could they be paranormal? Because of the fact that they're there and they can manifest these type of energies. But I feel too, and we also hear that we have these encounters with them during thunderstorms too, which is interesting, where they're in thunderstorms and they're there, and it's like there has to be something with that energy, because you know how like you could like go to a concert, right, and you feel the adrenaline of that place because like hell, I mean, I'm gonna use an example. I mean, listen, I mean, before he passed away, I love Van Halen. So I mean, listen, go to Van Halen concert, you listen to David Lee Roth and you hear Eddie Van Halen's guitar, hell yeah, that energy, it's feeling there. Could these creatures have an energy like they feel an energy when they're by electricity? I mean, it's not like it's a fetish or something weird, but like I mean,
Chris, when you're at that Eddie Van Halen concert, the energy you're feeling isn't from Eddie Van Halen; it's from the people surrounding you.
Exactly,
and the energy.
Right.
Now let's talk about what about like I call it EMF. I believe because the symptoms are just like it. It's happening a lot. Every symptom: electric, magnetic frequency, poisoning. Some people call it zapping. Some people call it infrasound. Infrasound's real, but I don't believe that this is what's happening when people get confused and people get nauseous and fall down just out of nowhere. You would think if Bigfoot could do that to you, wouldn't they have to expel it at you? That what people call zapping. Now, if they expel it at you, wouldn't it only make sense that would drain that from them and they would need to recharge? And like the things they do to our electronics, think about it. So many corrupt files and batteries just drained like that. And is that why they're at high areas that are high electrical?
You bring up a good point, and that is that when they have the zapping or the infrasound method, well, zapping, when you zapping, because we're both on the same page with zapping.
Yep.
I used to be a big admirer about infrasound for the longest time until I started getting into the spider web of so many different beliefs, and that's when I lost my focus with it, and I was like, okay, we're going off the grid here. When we look at zapping, though, it sounds more natural because, why is it that our batteries drain drastically in an encounter? And that's why I think we get into that paranormal thought because, I mean, when a presence of an apparition is trying to manifest itself, it's going to drain battery, it's going to drain anything it could. And I remember I've done some small, minor paranormal investigations where we felt energies, and those energies have drained our batteries completely. Yeah, I mean, I believe it. That is one thing I will certainly take in, and it reminds me of it because in the cryptid field, I like to be more about the thought process of it, that they are flesh and blood. But I also know too that not everyone will agree with that, and that's fine. But I also think that because unfortunately, I'm somebody who, when asked about like, okay, electricity and the concurrency, I don't know because I don't want to give an answer because I don't want to be wrong on it, because I want to be right on it, because I feel it's a tough one. I feel that the hardest questions out there are what they really are and why they're so attracted to some of the things we do humanly wise, whether it's, electricity or stalking a suburb. It sounds freaky, but we've seen it. But it's such a great question, though, right? About why they're structured with electricity. And could they recharge? Possibly. There has to be something. But see, I feel that we won't find that one out until one of us actually is there watching it unfold with our very own two eyes. But it's crazy. It really is. It makes me think now, like, what if?
There is. I mean, people report this sort of things. People who just got a report actually not too long ago of a guy basically seeing a Bigfoot in the water, doing some hand motions, and there's some bioluminescent lights. There's lights in the water.
Right.
It's in a freshwater lake. There's no animal, no plant life, nothing that will light up like that. And of course, when he scares the Bigfoot, realizes the lights go out, and it proceeds to kind of terrorize him and mess with him all night. So
let me ask you a question, guys, because I like that you brought up something that reminded me too, something, Blake. What do you guys think of this phenomena where we hear flashing lights or foggy lights that change in hue and saturation before some cryptid encounter? there is a case in upstate New York that Greg Newkirk had done where he wrote about these campers who had seen weird, ominous lights before that were thickened like fog in the forest before these dogmen came and attacked them. What do you guys think about that phenomena?
Well, it definitely happens. Chad, you're on mute. I personally have seen a whitest orb in an area, and it was preceded by a fleeting glimpse of Sasquatch running behind a tree. Also, Chad was hearing stuff in that group. I don't know, is it related? I don't know, but it did happen before. The activity with Bigfoot, so
I've seen lights in the woods a lot in my life, but nothing that I could just say it was anything supernatural. Could be eye flash, But twice last year, I've seen what I can't explain. Almost like, I don't know. We were in an undisclosed location. I'll leave it at that. And one of our team members had a giant Chinese lantern, and he lit it, and it let it float up slow. And then out of nowhere, this large ball of light just came flying out of the woods, sat there right next to this Chinese lantern for like 3 or 4 seconds, and then just shot back in the woods. And I know what I saw. Okay, so on that one. And then recently down in Florida, just a short time ago, 2 team members, Josh got in front of me, and all of a sudden I look in the woods and I see this glowing light. And this glowing light like shoots up way above the trees and just sits there for a second. And I'm pretty close to it. I mean, not like next, I'm like 50, 100, yeah, somewhere in there. It was night, and it was field between us, a little one. And then it just shot down and disappeared. But like when I see little lights like flickering in the woods, I try not to think of those necessarily as like an orb. But these 2 things I've seen, I don't know. What is it? It's something. I really saw it.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting phenomena, and I brought it up because I feel that there is something missing out of that. And do I think it could be UFO related? I mean, possibly, but at the same time, it's a phenomena that it's hard to disclose because of the minimal experience on it. There is a woman that lived around Ocala National Park, and it was in Ocala, Florida. Now, I'd done a couple episodes on Ocala before. When I used to do my show, I did a show episode series called States and Activity in Florida. There's this one episode where I had a woman express to me so many reports that happened around that area. And I compared Ocala to like the LBL at the time when it was relevant. And I also compared it to Willow Springs, which was a huge hotspot for weird activity, or the Loop, or in Shenandoah Valley as well. So all of these locations and what they had in common is series of undisclosed phenomena where people were seeing mysterious lights. In this case, in Ocala, this woman had seen mysterious lights, no explanation at all. But then there's a bunch of dogman activity, Bigfoot activity. There's currently Bigfoot and dogman activity in Ocala National Park. Now, just recently, as recent as I think last year, there was a news report from Florida News about this Bigfoot expeditioners that were in the woods that were not leaving the forest till they found Bigfoot or had evidence of Bigfoot. They 100% did an article on this confirming that Bigfoot was real and that Bigfoot was not, this make-believe creature. I think the biggest challenge as an investigator is trying to come forward and convince a crowd of non-believers to express what is the truth and what's out there and why we need to take better caution in the woods. I think anybody who goes into the woods unarmed is a fool. And I don't mean that to be hostile. I mean it in all fairness because, it's not Bigfoot and dogman that you got to worry about in the woods. You got to worry about Bears, in your areas, respectfully, I don't know in Michigan if what your national bear is. I know in New Jersey we got the black bear, and I mean we've had a lot of crazy black bear attacks here and there. So I mean they're vicious bastards. I'm not gonna lie, but you know but you know anything out there can kill you. Point blank. I mean, hell, you know, a deer. You get if you get pissed off the wrong buck, it's gonna come after you. And trust me, I've seen people. I've seen it firsthand, and that's people don't understand that, especially if you're brand new to the field.
No, they don't. No, exactly. Deer kill a lot more people than bear do each and every year, and they're not just like Bambi. You know, they have those horns for a reason, and you know, bears. We have black bear here, and we have wolves and cougars and stuff too. But black bear, a bear's a bear. The only difference is, you know, the weight. You know, but a 500-pound black bear and a 500-pound grizzly, still a 500-pound bear, and very dangerous.
Going carnivorous, starting to people are reporting they're starting to eat more like
black bear are predatory to humans. Brown bears and grizzlies are typically not. But black bears do prey on people. They will. So they typically can be more dangerous. It just depends.
Black bears kill more people than grizzly bears every year, right?
And of course, there are other cryptids out there. So being armed is something that we do recommend too, because each and every year, with more and more encounters and on the you know, more violent side. It definitely leads me to believe that, you know, people should be more prepared, you know, be armed because of what is out there.
No, and I agree 100%, both of you. I had actually somebody in a group once ask me a very interesting question, and I knew that they were brand new to the field because they were fans of the podcast and they started getting into it because of the podcast and whatnot. And they asked me, like, what is the right protocol to go out there in the woods? And I said, well, for one, I mean, don't go out there thinking you're going to find a cryptid. I mean, that's just real for me, because you're going out there and you're going to have that intent. You're not going to find nothing. And plus, on top of that, when you happen to, if in the event you do, your body language, your reaction is going to go from excitement to terror. Because I know people like this one individual, like I shared earlier, I could tell you that if you were to see a Bigfoot, yeah, you're not going to sit there and want to take a picture. You're going to want to get out of there, especially if it's coming right at you. I mean, we as kids, we were scared of horror characters as a kid. I mean, Frankenstein terrified me when I was 3. So, I mean, you know, when I think of Bigfoot, right, you know, if I were to think if Frankenstein was going to come at me, well, that's my Frankenstein going to come right at me. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that happen when you see these things. And the point of the post was like, hey, you know, what's the best protocol? And I say, well, go out there thinking you're going to find it. And then, of course, I'd say never go out there unarmed. Going out there unarmed, you're a fool. You're going to end up feeling what the wildlife is. And then on top of that, don't go alone. I tell people all the time, like, look, you know, you can't go alone. I don't think going alone is the smartest thing to do. If you're an experienced hunter, go with someone else who's experienced too, because
that's Blake. He does it all the time.
But see, but you
everywhere
know what,
we go, even in Florida.
One thing I will say though about that. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you, Blake. What?
No. I am guilty of that. I do go by myself a lot. Well, you know, been doing this 17 years, and before I started roaming with these guys, I was always by myself,
right?
And not always that well armed. Or armed at all. I would always have a big knife, but now, my older and wiser days, you know, especially in the more rugged areas, you should definitely be armed. There's more out there.
Right.
Seeing Dogman personally made me realize that you know,
yeah,
you want to be more precautious out there. It was so unexpected. That's why it's just like.
And see, you don't want to.
Preparedness level needs to go up.
Yeah, no, and you know, and I tell people this too. It's like, it's not to go out there and say you're badass, right, or anything, but it's also to.
Yeah, I am. Wait, no, yeah.
Well, I mean, you both are badasses. We've established on every show you guys are bad. I watch you guys, and that's one thing I wanted to say too. Is even though I'm doing a show with you guys, I love watching you guys. You guys have great character and personality. If I wasn't like 200 so miles away, I would be crashing a nice cold one with you guys because you guys are great. The thing is though is that when you're doing this type of work, it's also a bitch, and I don't mean to cuss like this. I really don't. But it's literally how I put it, because I've met people who have told me straight out that they've went into the woods, found nothing, made calls, and I was like, "What do you mean you made calls?" And they're saying, "Well, I made these vocalizations." And I was like, "Well, how did you do it?" And then they explained it to me, and I said, "Can you demonstrate it to me?" And then, I'm acting like a PI because I feel like, this guy got lucky or she got lucky that she didn't do anything really bad, because who knows what you could have done. You may not have called a Bigfoot over. You may have called another animal over and you didn't realize it. I've seen people who have made weird vocalizations, and the next thing you know, a bobcat comes out. I'm like, well, where the hell did that come from? And, the big problem is arrogance. Because people want to find these things. People think that you're going to get far with finding one of these things.
You don't want to let a Bigfoot know you're looking for it. That's the whole thing. And they're, so when you're out there knocking on trees, whooping and howling, no, what you do is you be incognito, and you just act like a normal human being and do something. And you go out at night, not in huge groups, and you sit in places and listen and watch with equipment. And I typically only reply to like owls. I'll do that because I do a terrible owl call, but it's not the worst in the world.
No, it's terrible. It's one of the worst I've ever heard. Strongly. One of the worst I've ever heard, but it works.
Besides mine, so stop.
That brings up a good point. Is everyone's gun ho to jump in this, and there's a whole dangerous side of it, and it rarely gets talked about. And this is the side of these creatures, not only Bigfoot killing people. And Bigfoot, we have reports in Michigan of people dying, people getting head ripped off, being basically torn apart and thrown into trees. And there's many stories all the way all over the world of that. And it's not, running. I mean, we do it all the time, but when you come face to face with these creatures, and Chad can tell you, seeing eye shine and silhouettes and stuff, it does affect you, and it's not definitely everyone can handle that. And especially, seeing a Bigfoot charge after you. I mean, you're going to go through a whole slew of emotions and stuff. And, it's not the smartest thing to probably get yourself in that situation, but these things are out there, and for some reason, they're intelligent enough that they don't always attack people. Why is that? Why do we have reports of them killing people for the slightest reason, or compared to them tolerating us going in there, being intrusive, trying to get photographs, videos, and stuff,
I have my opinion, but I want to hear Chris's. What's your opinion on why they don't always kill us when they can?
I laugh at it because this is one of these questions too. It's like a $2 million question. It really is, because when we look at personality, right? See, my personality. I mean, even though that we're talking through microphones right now, or webcams, I go out. I have an outgoing persona. I was very shy, very weird kid growing up. Yeah, but I get older, I'm expressing myself. I feel like I can express myself, and my personality, I'm very laid back. But when you get on my bad side, though, when you do something stupid, then my personality is the equivalent of an ICBM. And that's not good, because I don't like, and I'm not saying that to make myself look good. I don't need to prove that or do anything of that nature, because that's just arrogant. But I will say though is that if someone did something that was to me very, very sensitive, I'd get mad. And I feel that sometimes when we get into these creatures' territories, we just do that. whether we step on a stick that they put there for a reason, or we are walking in their territory for reason. We don't know that because we don't communicate like them. We don't have the same vocal language we do with them. And there's certain things in their code I think we're still learning about, and that's why they get pissed at us sometimes. Or for the fact being is that we're interrupting this creature in a specific moment of time. I look at some of these creatures as well too. When we look at some of these loner cryptids, right? These Bigfoots that are like lone wolves, dogmen that are loners.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, one of my favorite movies is First Blood. I love that movie. And you know, I when you look at the psychology of Stallone's John Rambo,
You gave everybody your age, Chris.
oh yeah, I'm a sucker millennial though that has a taste of classics. So,
All right.
so I could roll with that though. But that's the guessing game right there on age. I will say though that movie does deliver a good example of how PTSD, how you can be so psychologically torn by something, especially in that movie. So when you look at a lone wolf, we don't know what that creature, Bigfoot dogman, has been through. We can't sympathize with it. We can't because we don't know their vocals. They could tell us one thing, and they could be like, "Oh, well, I'm going to kill you." You know that's how it is. And I personally think it has a lot to do with behavior, personality. I feel that we do certain things to them that might want us to do that. Do I personally believe that they kill humans? Of course. I mean, hell. I mean, yeah, it was a question, but I mean, I know people who don't believe in that and will put it on the blame of something else, like a bear or a mountain lion. But
all the time.
If a Bigfoot, if something has twisted some man in half and half his body is in a tree and his other half is on the ground, a bear don't do that. I know a cougar don't do that either. So that's something really large that's able to do that. And that, to me, that really makes that debate. It's like, what can you do to piss something like that off?
I'm kind of the opinion of this, and I want to know your opinion, Chris.
Sure, yeah.
I do believe that if there is a lone Bigfoot all by itself, that would probably be pretty dangerous. But I also am of the opinion of my experience, which I can't prove, but what I believe from my experiences is that they live in family groups and they've learned over time. And if there's a family group and they kill you, what's going to happen? People are going to they're going to look, and there's going to be dogs, and there's going to be search parties. So I believe the creature is most likely, and this is a lot of other people's belief, intelligent enough to realize even if it wants to kill you, that would be a bad mistake, especially to kill you in its area, because now the attention comes to its area. Now it has to. So I can't prove it. That's just something I believe. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, no, I mean, when we look at territory, we look at their pod. I know people say they use the word pod, they use tribe. With dogmen, obviously, I've used pack. I know that for the most part, they don't want the conflict because they know that what's next right behind that, it's like opening that door that you don't want to open because you know what's going to be right next, what's going to be right in that door when you open it. And that's kind of the thing right there. If a human being, especially if it's a group of people and you happen to kill one of the people, then yeah, that's going to cause them to come back with dogs, guns. You know, that's basically, I don't know, like if a manhunt, if we were to do it right, you have 30-something people armed against what, 5 Bigfoot? I mean, yeah, you know, the odds can be very impressive if the creature.
That's not really what I was saying.
No, but I'm just saying as an example.
If somebody just turns up missing,
right?
If they get the opportunity to take the old sheep and snatch it up and take it away, and like the last person and the person way in front or way behind, if they did that, there's search parties in that area. So that's what I was meaning.
Oh, okay, yeah, no. So yeah, I looked
nobody
at it
knows. Nobody saw the Bigfoot grab you. You're just gone. Well, now you got dogs. You got hundreds of people pushing through everything, and
no, that's true, and that's the thing too. Like I feel that they are, like you said, they're smart enough not to really get to that stage, but I also know that I feel that though, that if they wanted you, they would do it. They can outrun you. We hear it all the time, even in Dogman reports, especially when you're getting chased by one. And one of the biggest mistakes you ever want to do is run away. I know that's hard to do. I don't know how you guys feel about it. Maybe this is a question for me I can ask you too. But how do you feel particularly about when someone sees one of these creatures and they run away from them? Because you hear about how running away from something, especially if it's a large predator, is going to do something. Like, how do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, you should never run away. It's just natural, you know. With all the predators of the planet, you never typically don't ever run away from a predator. You act like a predator and you back away. You know, that's how you're supposed to do it, and that's what we do. You know, we back out of areas if it's getting a little too hot and heavy, but we never run. That always triggers responses of known animals, let alone these cryptids, and plus you can't outrun them. You know, humans are not very fast. We are built for endurance. We can run longer than most every other animal, but we certainly are not as fast. So,
My opinion is I try not to run, but many times I move out of an area kind of swiftly, especially if you're distant and alone and you're hearing stuff and you get that feeling. I will leave the area. Do I take off and run? No. And one thing about taking off and running, like Blake was saying, you don't actually really know what it is you're hearing. You're out looking for Bigfoot. You have Bigfoot on your brain. It could be a cougar. It could be a wolf. It could be, depending on where you are, about anything. And that is when you run, the flee reaction triggers the attack reaction, especially in felines. So he's right about that. So it's not, I guarantee there's a lot of things I've heard that weren't Bigfoot, but they still interest me. And I can't say they were, but they intimidated me.
Yeah, no. That's a good point too, is that if you're far away in a distance and you hear something like that, and depending on what the noise is, you don't know what the noise is, and your mind, your adrenaline, your body wants to get out of there. And I personally wouldn't blame you. I mean, if I was by myself and I heard something like that, if it was something very unmethodly and very disturbing, I will not be there. I will run. I will be out of there, and that would be only because if it can't find me, and who knows, maybe it may. I don't know if it knows it sees me. It can make a noise far away, but how do I not know it doesn't see me from that far distance? That's the thing. You know, these predators in the woods, they're so smart. You won't even notice. And I know you guys know that. But for most, I mean, like I've gotten people who've wanted to go out and investigate, but they think it's like the Wild West, where you can just go out there and start things and think it's okay until you step on the wrong toes. It's not. It's terrible. But yeah, guys, basically I really enjoy a lot of what you guys have spoken about, and I hope that my information, what I've talked about, has been kind of in that same juncture. But you know, at the same time, you know, what we study here is so interesting and it's so challenging because the answers are challenging to find.
And the controversy over it all. Mm-hmm. And we all, like, some of us are knowers. We know what we've seen and experienced, but there's so much controversy, and yet we still look at it, and some people think we're crazy.
Yeah, it's a reality to us, and yet it's nothing to the people who don't know, and that causes their worlds to shatter when they do, you know, come face to face with something that really does scare the crap out of them. And that's why it's our job to spread, you know, the awareness and try to let people know so they have some type of reference to look upon and maybe hopefully survive a situation that they might not otherwise would have if they had no clue, you know. So I got a question for you, Chris.
Yes.
Where do you think these cryptids sleep and live? Are they sleeping around underneath trees? Are they going underground? Are they disappearing in portals and stuff? What's
There
your
was
take on that?
I had when I was doing that investigation in March, we had come across a gentleman who had reported one or two of them that popped out from these little dunes, and they were running because they were there quadding, or they were there in their Jeeps. They were doing off-road, and clearly the noise distracted the Bigfoot, so they had seen them. I think that they find habitats such as caves if they have the chance, small little ditches. But the thing is, though, I think this is all in the deeper part of the woods. I don't think that they're like, we're used to going in like, I don't know, like give or take 10 or 12 acres, maybe less than that when we're going into the woods. And you gotta be so deep in the woods to get the chance. I mean, but then again, I mean, who knows? Some of these creatures now are becoming more and more closer to residential areas, whether it's because the environments are being torn down or because there's migration where the food is going. So it differs. But I don't think they're hiding in trees. I don't think they sleep in trees. I think that they sleep on the ground. I think they can hide underground. I had taken a picture of a railroad that was destroyed and demolished. And I took a coal mine of a railway with the iron and stuff, another photograph of graffiti. And I looked inside and it was like, I didn't find anything in that would be considered evidence, but I found what could be a nice hideout for one of these things. So I feel that they can go into anything that has walls deep in the woods. I mean, clearly, if, Bigfoot's going to go into a little igloo in the woods, then evidently it could be a homeless person's igloo. It could be just a random igloo. We don't know. But the scary part about it is that these creatures, they can even hide in things we would barely think of, like bushes, wood, logs, stuff like that. So I think that they do this type of stuff, this type of source material, but it's just challenging. It really is to really determine, because they're just. But to summarize it for you, to give a basic answer, I do think their big three are caves, small ditches, or something underground. Necessarily something that has a roof over its head.
Yeah, excellent. All right, so let's take some questions from the chat, guys. Let's see those questions in all caps before we wrap up the show. But we got a Bigfoot conference coming up July 17th, and we definitely want you guys to check out all the great speakers we're having. We're having catering, of course, and pull up a picture here real quick. That's going to be an awesome event. We're actually having the more traditional flesh and blood type of side, and then a paranormal room where we talk about all the paranormal aspects of Bigfoot, of other cryptids, and ghosts and UFOs. Because again, it's happening in all the same areas as Bigfoot. Is it all a piece to the same puzzle? Are they different pieces, different puzzles? We don't know. But we're definitely going to look and discuss the possibilities of everything. So it's going to be a very interesting event. Pull some stuff up here. So yeah. Thought I had the newer poster uploaded, but I guess I uploaded the wrong one. But we actually have the She Scotchers coming too. So they're an awesome group coming from Minnesota. We have Cliff Brackman, Igor Botsev, Ken Gerhard, Adam Davies, Robert Kreider, Jason Kenzie, Miranda Young, Janice Carter, and Carrie Arnold. And it's going to be a fantastic event. We got a bunch of local speakers too. Val Zavala, who's part of our group, and is known as the Danerminer guy. His group on Facebook is Michigan Bigfoot and Reports Gumshoe Corner. It's a fantastic group. Check it out. give your report to him. And we have Robert Daigle, who's actually the godfather of Michigan Bigfoot research. He's not known as well as he deserves to be, so by all means, definitely someone you should check out. And we have Shatan Noir, who's a expert at the Great Lakes, Great Lake monsters and stuff, sea serpents, and all sorts of lore surrounding the mystery of the Great Lakes. Steve Ward is a Mothman researcher. He actually takes people out in the bunkers and stuff, and knows all the lore and stuff like the back of his hand. And of course, Robin McCrae, who had their own experience here in Michigan. So check it out. Check it out on the Michigan Bigfoot Conference.com for ticket info and all that good stuff. It's gonna be fun. It's really gonna be fun. So we look forward to all of it. And it's coming soon, so make sure you guys get your tickets. It's going to be a fantastic event. All right, so let's see some questions out there, guys.
I don't see it. What about what we don't have a flyer for yet? I mean,
we also are doing Dewey Lake, September 11th, Dewey Lake Conference. Give me a second. Got to do a reverb. I'm actually hosting off the cell phone, doing the webcam off a different computer, so I have to jump in and do that. So, Dewey Lake Monster Conference, September 11th. It's in Dowagiac, Michigan. The Sister Lakes Brewery Company, a great, fantastic venue who are going to be hosting us, and it's going to be a fantastic event. It's amazing when you throw these little conferences, especially at a small town like Dewey Lake, what you will come across in some of the stories that we actually heard there. So it's going to be an awesome event with great food, great beer on tap, of course, from the brewery, and a fantastic area that does have a legend of the Dewey Lake Monster, which is another cryptid that could be a Sasquatch, could be something else. It was its own mystery that did terrorize the town, including attacking people, flipping over cars, and just terrorizing the town. That's why it's still legend, still lives on till today. So, looking forward to that.
It is a free event, everybody, and there will be vendors there, and we will have speakers. So we'll have a donation jar. If you feel free to try to, if you want to help sponsor our costs and the things we do, because we're not making money on this, feel free in the jar. There's campgrounds around there, and all the motels are about 15 minutes away if you come from out of town. But it'll be a 6-hour event on September 11th from noon till 6 p.m. Speakers so far are Steve Ward, Shatan Noor, the Lost Cryptids, and I don't know who the Dogman person is, but I guess it's somebody that's well known in the Dogman community, and we're going to try to get another Bigfoot speaker. So come on and join us for this event.
Yeah, speakers being added, and it's going to be fun. In a great area, there's a bunch of lakes out there. The fishing alone is amazing. So, Chris, I'm not seeing any questions and stuff, but thanks for coming on. I think we're gonna have you on again. You'd be an excellent guest for a panel show that I'm definitely planning. So, definitely would like to get you on for that again. I think you're a fantastic researcher, and definitely glad to have you on, man.
Well, he's also a really nice gentleman, aside from the research.
He is. You're a great guy.
Yes, I've known him for years online. This is the first I've ever actually got to talk to him like this. We message back and forth. I've known 6 years probably. But hopefully, Chris, you can drive that 200 and some miles to the conference.
Yeah, absolutely. I will give you an update on my schedule because it does come at a pretty transitional time for my career around that time. However, I will do what I can. And I want to thank you two again because the feelings are mutual. You guys are very great. And Chad, like you said, we spoke online for years, and now first time ever, we're conversing. You're a very great guy, and you as well, Blake. I know we spoke a couple months ago for your interview on my show, and I'd love to have you guys, love to speak with you guys some more. And, doors always open, and for me, as I told you guys in the beginning, I no longer am doing any current research. I've retired from it in a sense, but I'm still very active in the field. I am very supportive of people such as yourselves, with your channels and your content and what your guys are doing and promoting it, as well as also everybody else out there who I've had a great relationship with and affiliation with. So you guys keep doing what you're doing. I love what you guys do with the show. You have a great setup. I like the duology you two present, and keep up the great work. I want to thank you guys again for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Well, thank you, Chris. We really appreciate that. And, I know you say you're retired, but hopefully it's a semi-retirement. And hopefully we can get you out in the field in Michigan and maybe out in some of your spots. So without further ado, guys, let's get this outro out of the way. And, the number on there is for you guys to call to report any reports and to call to chat to the Lost Cryptids. So we'll see you guys on the next live show.